Greetings, true believers. I'm Jeffrey Turner, aka MegaJetty1, and you can bet on that. And I am here to give you what I feel Spider-Man Far From Home should have been. Now, as I have said in my review of Spider-Man Far From Home, I do believe the movie was very entertaining in an alternative Spider-Man kind of way. But, since this is the MCU, and we are looking for something a little more in line with the comics, I think I can do better. So with that said, I have to say that what we should have had was another Avenger character teaming up with Spider-Man in this film. Because we had the Hulk in a Thor film, and we had Iron Man in the previous Spider-Man film. So, who do we have in this Spider-Man film? The answer, Captain Marvel. And I know there are a lot of people out there who do not think she deserves any praise, because, let's face it, the only ones that praise her are the shills. But let's not get into that. Let's get into the fact that Captain Marvel has, what? She's had one movie, and what has she done? I mean, other than send the Kree running home with their tails between their legs. Let's see, she comes back to Earth after many devastating catastrophes occurred. And what else? She comes back demanding to know where Fury is, and then arrogantly she makes it apparent that she's the one person that can help them defeat Thanos. They go and they find Thanos. All she is a scout. And yeah, she did bring Tony back. But then what? 5 years and she's out in space once again, not doing much help for the Avengers. Then, by the end of the movie, she shows up, destroys one of Thanos' ships, and then she takes the Stark Gauntlet to deliver. And that's it. She does nothing. She does absolutely nothing. And yeah, she's not worthy of any praise. So, why don't we use that to tell a good story? Let's get into the fact that she has all this great power. But what does she do with it? She's reckless. She's irresponsible. She's pretty much the opposite of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, a guy who is all about responsibility. So, it's an interesting dynamic to have. You have a hero who's completely irresponsible teaming with a character who is known for being responsible. So, with that said, let's open up the Far From Home. We open up with the fact that Tony Stark is gone, and Peter is still dealing with the loss of this. But let's do something that neither Homecoming nor nor Far From Home or any of the MCU movies have done. Tie the death of Tony Stark with the passing of Uncle Ben. So, we finally established that Uncle Ben existed in this franchise. And basically, we have it where Peter became Spider-Man because of, losing after the incident where he lost his uncle. But the loss of Tony Stark brings that pain right back. So he feels like, he's dealing with the loss of two parental figures. And so basically, when the whole Mysterio incident comes along, Fury does call in Spider-Man, but Captain Marvel does show up, and she says, "Step aside, kid. Let me take care of this." She comes off coming off as cocky and arrogant like usual, but then the whole Mysterio incidents occur, and she's screwing up. She is making mistakes. She is being a blunt instrument like she's known to be in the MCU, and things are being made worse because of it. And then you have Peter Parker come in and have to actually Spider-Man-splain to her. What you do is Peter sits her down and says, you have all this great power, but you're not being responsible with it. That is what my uncle always taught me. And yeah, where's your uncle? He's dead. Like Tony Stark. You see, before there ever was an Iron Man to take me on as to coach me in the ways of superheroing, I did all this myself. I had to learn on the fly. I had to learn how to be a hero after I lost my uncle. Now I know we have all seen this Uncle Ben death origin thing before, but this is the MCU. It's a different version. Here's what I say we do differently. You show a clip of Uncle Ben noticing Peter acting strangely after he had been bitten by the spider, like in the previous Spider-Man films. And then you basically have him chastising Peter about you're being irresponsible. You need to be more responsible. Peter runs off, not wanting to hear it anymore. And then Uncle Ben does go after him. What happens is that Uncle Ben arrives at the wrestling arena Peter is using his powers to make money at, and he sees the Amazing Spider-Man and knows by his height, build, and his attitude and the way he talks, it is Peter Parker. That is something we're doing different. Uncle Ben knows right off the bat his nephew is Spider-Man. Knows it upon, following Peter, of course. But here's the thing. When Peter's in the middle of the match, Uncle Ben at first seems to be upset and disappointed because he thinks his nephew is being he knows his nephew has these powers, but is being reckless and irresponsible with it. However, at the same time, he starts to recall how the bills have been piling up and money's been very tight for him and Aunt May. So he realizes the reason Peter's putting himself through this, instead of using his powers to help other people, is because he's focusing on helping his family first. And as a result of that, Uncle Ben goes from being upset and then actually is impressed by Peter's actions. Well, during the match, Peter sees Uncle Ben in the crowd and is frozen in fear for a moment, realizing his uncle knows it's him. And then he gets knocked to the mat, and then Uncle Ben shouts, "Don't give up, Peter!" And then Peter hears this, and this gives him the strength to get back up and defeat his opponent. And then he sees his uncle cheering for him in the crowd. It gives that little extra personal touch that Uncle Ben found out he was Spider-Man. At first was disappointed, but then was proud of him enough to actually want him to cheer him on to win. Then after the match is over, Uncle Ben goes outside the arena to wait for Peter. While Peter goes to get his money, it doesn't go the way Peter expects, and then, of course, the place gets robbed, and we know what happens from there on out. So basically, Peter tells this origin to Captain Marvel to help her understand what he had to learn the hard way. With great power comes great responsibility. He's a teenager, he's been given great power, yet he has been using it as responsible as he can be, despite the fact that his friends and everyone around him keep insisting that who knows who he is, insists that he shows off with it. Be like Tony Stark in that regard. And Captain Marvel, she sees him in a new light because now she realizes she has had all this great power too, yet she's been nothing but a blunt, reckless instrument with it. Absolutely irresponsible. And so, with that, Peter and Captain Marvel team up to take down Mysterio, which in fact also calls upon something from the comics, and that Carol does have a crush on Peter. This was hinted at in Endgame during their first meeting, the way she smiled at him. And that is how I feel you could have done Far From Home better. And you can bet on that.